Welcome to a special episode of Arbitration Life. I am Janette Brin, and my co-host, Hana Doumal, is joining us from Paris.
Bonjour, Janette, and to our viewing and listening audience, I am in Paris representing the BVI International Arbitration Center at Paris Arbitration Week. And I must say that I am very excited to be here. I am at the Paris office of Vannin Capital, preparing to introduce yet another very special guest on this special episode of Arbitration Life.
Given the ongoing pandemic, I can imagine that our friends at Paris Arbitration Week have been extra busy working to pull everything together. The pandemic has made it not impossible, but just a bit challenging to work through as we ourselves are working to pull through with BVI Arbitration Week. So Hannah, what is the current situation in terms of COVID-related protocols in Paris?
Well, Janette, the situation seems under control and you're able to go out to restaurants, cinemas, cafes, if you have a pass sanitaire, sanitary pass, I would say, which means either being vaccinated or having an antigenic test, negative results within 72 hours prior to going out.
Wow.
So I would say it's pretty much back to normal when you're in the street, and we're very close to the Champs-Élysées, and I walk there. Yeah, it's full of people, everything's open, so it's really nice.
Nice. I can't wait to see your pictures.
Absolutely, and videos. So today we have the pleasure of having the head of international arbitration, head of the Paris office at Vannin Capital. Her experience in the arbitration funding markets is unrivaled and spans across single case funding, award monetization, enforcement funding, and a range of different bespoke portfolio arrangements. She's actually considered one of the industry's pioneers and thought leaders of legal finance, a very busy lady. And I want to thank her for taking the time to be with us today. She's also a founding member and now the president of the board of Paris Arbitration Week. Please welcome Madame Yasmin Mohammad.
Hi, Janette. Hi, Hana.
Hi, Yasmin. It's such a pleasure to meet you via this forum, of course. Welcome to our show, Arbitration Life.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to get right into it. Yasmin, you are the head of international arbitration and head of the Paris office at Vannin Capital. Did I say it right?
That's right.
A market leader in legal financing. Could you please tell us more about this awesome role?
Sure. So basically, my role consists in two separate but very linked aspects, which are, on the one hand, we are here to source opportunities to invest. That's what we do. Funders invest in cases, invest in arbitral awards, invest in portfolios for corporates of litigations and arbitrations. So our role, my role here, is to oversee our sourcing of those cases. In other words, reaching out to the relevant clients and their lawyers in order to see whether or not we can help them in either bringing their claims through sort of traditional financing or help them monetize the asset, which is their legal assets. Very often, as you know, corporates don't look at their legal departments or their legal assets as assets. They look at them as liabilities or something in which they need to spend money in. And that's where we step in and basically take the cost of litigation off their balance sheet, or even better, help them monetize early on decisions or awards they haven't actually received money on yet. So that's one aspect, which is finding the appropriate opportunities for us to invest in. The other aspect is making sure there are appropriate opportunities, which is vetting those cases, both on a purely financial level and also on a legal level. So internally, what we do is we review the cases to make sure that it passes our investment criteria, both legally in terms of risk and financially. But we also use and called upon external lawyers, experts, financial experts, legal experts, whatever type of expertise is needed for us to really drill down in the context of our due diligence and make sure that we are funding cases that are really winners, because obviously for us it's a win or lose, because there is no halfway, as you know, in arbitration. Either you won or you're lost. And even when you won, you still need to, defend the case in the context of annulment or set aside proceedings, and then go enforce. So it's really a long haul risk that we're taking, just on the win or lose, then on the setting aside or annulment, and then on the enforcement. So we vet those three stages. We vet the stage of, is this case going to get a favorable award? Once it gets a favorable award, is there a risk of setting aside or annulment? And once the award is really confirmed, what are our chances of actually getting money paid out on the basis of that award? So in a nutshell, that's the basis of what we do.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Now, Yasmin, you are a founding member of the Paris Arbitration Week, and you're the president of the board. And Paris Arbitration is a one-main conference and platform that showcases the thoughts of the world's leading practitioners, law firms, administrative bodies, and thinkers in international arbitration. Could you please tell us what led to the Paris Arbitration Week creation, and maybe describe some challenges of organizing such an event?
Of course. So the beginning of Paris Arbitration Week was in fact a trip that I took to Hong Kong.
Okay.
They say imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Well, that's exactly what Paris Arbitration Week is. Flattery to the great achievement of, it was Hong Kong, and I think I had just been to Dubai, and they also pull off a great arbitration week. And I had returned back to Paris, and I was a bit frustrated because, as you know, we the French have a lot of ego and pride in our arbitral community generally, in France mostly, and came back home thinking, why don't we have a week? We probably have the largest number of arbitration practitioners, French and non-French, based out of Paris, and the greatest number of firms with bespoke arbitration practices. Why do we have our own week? So I began lobbying the Parisian institutions, so Paris Place de l'Arbitrage, the ICC, CFA, and AFA, and asking them for their moral support in getting this off the ground, which they fully gave me, and started recruiting a couple of other French arbitration practitioners of my vintage who are friends at the ICC and in various other institutions to come together with a plan. So it really started off just by the frustration of Paris not having its own arbitration week, which I suspect is how a lot of other arbitration weeks started. And it really grew incredibly quickly. And that's really a testament to the arbitral community in Paris, because what we do in terms of the organization of Paris Arbitration Week is really bringing it all together. So organizing a platform, setting out some very simple and clear rules as to how organizers should be running their events or publicizing their events. We organize all the social media coverage, and it's really chef d'orchestre in French, really orchestrating it and bring it together. But the success of the week really comes down to each individual event organizer, which are the law firms in Paris, the experts. And now for the first time this year, it's actually quite interesting to highlight it. We have organizers from other jurisdictions. So we have British firms or chambers, we have Swiss, a firm from Luxembourg, who are now Paris Arbitration Week partners, organizers, but who don't have offices here. So they're really just virtually participating as partners in the week, which is fantastic, which is not what we had initially envisaged.
Right.
But with COVID and with the huge success of our virtual Paris Arbitration Week in 2020, foreigners decided to think, why couldn't we participate? And they're absolutely right, and we're delighted to have them.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, you've also spent a decade in private practice at Freshfields, working in Paris before helping to establish the arbitration group in Dubai. Could you please tell us about that experience and how it shaped you in being an arbitration practitioner?
Well, it's my education. Freshfields is the backbone of everything I know about really law and arbitration or the arbitral procedure. As you will all know, legal education is wonderful, but when it comes down to international arbitration, you learn everything that you learn and that you know and that you use on a daily basis within the firm, with the amazing legal practitioners within the firm that you work in and that you start at. And Freshfields, I have to say, obviously to me, I'm still starry-eyed about Freshfields, and my time there was the best education I could have hoped for. The senior associates, junior associates, the partners, everybody was of stellar legal quality and incredibly nice. I've made some of my best friends during those times, and so I couldn't have hoped for a better education. And that's what Freshfields represents, both purely legally, also on what Freshfields taught me in terms of professionalism, how one conducts oneself in a professional environment. It's very English, but it's also incredibly, in French we would say passe-partout, which means it easily translates in most cultures that you will come by. Don't get me wrong, the French are wonderful, and so are the Americans. So, a lot of my education was also with Americans in school, but the Brits have this thing that you have to give back to them, which is they never say anything too extreme or too understated, and it gets you by in most contexts. So there's nothing I could have done really since Freshfields had it not been for my time at Freshfields.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
And now, Yasmin, would you say you chose arbitration, or would you say arbitration chose you?
I think it's a bit of both. I'm sorry to be a cop-out, but it's a bit of both. I was in law school at the Sorbonne in France, and I come from a mixed background, I guess. I'm originally Iranian. I grew up in France, and my parents put us through American or international schools. And I was looking for a field of law in law that could help me sort of bring that out and use that. And, this little bit of, difference in me, I wanted to make the best use of it in my legal career. And I was passionate about conflicts of laws. Now that sounds terribly nerdy, but I was. It was the field of law when I first studied it. It was mind-blowing to me. It was so logical, it made sense. The precedents and the jurisprudence were also human stories, because there's a lot of divorces and marriages, and she's French and she got married in Sweden, but then she got divorced in England, and then she died in Indonesia. What law applies to her heritage, to her inheritance. Yeah. And so field of law that I thought was absolutely wonderful, except there was no potential career as a lawyer. And in my mind, being a lawyer was defending a client, going to court, having something to fight for. Usually people with that specialty end up teaching, which is also wonderful, but I wanted to go into law because I wanted the action of defending a client. And then one day we got our first class in international arbitration, and then the lights went on in the room, because it was clearly a field of law that brought together both the legal aspect that I really found fascinating, which was conflicts of law and international law, but it also would allow me to actually go into a courtroom. I mean, not a traditional courtroom, but still a courtroom. So it was all in international arbitration from the first day of class onwards.
I think that's an amazing answer, really. A bit of both.
So Yasmin, what difficulties or even failures taught you the most in your career?
So difficulties and failures, they're countless. I think it's like everybody, I've had small successes and small, failures and bigger successes and then bigger failures as well. I think what I've learned, which is the most important in that respect, is that our failures, in the same way as our successes build and develop who we are. And that, I guess it's a bit commonplace to say it, but it's very true. Each failure brought me closer to what I wanted to achieve. And so with age, unfortunately, but that's part of the deal, and experience, I've come to terms with the fact that failures we call them failures, but in reality, it's just a trial. I tried and it didn't succeed, but the next try I might succeed.
Right.
And that's really what, it's been my takeaway from me not necessarily achieving what I wanted to achieve. And actually, I don't really use the term failure any longer. So, and I wish I had understood that earlier. I wish I had understood that trying and not succeeding the first time around doesn't mean that you're not going to succeed. On the contrary, it's the only way one does succeed is trial and error. Trial, recalibrating, try again. Doesn't work, recalibrate and try again. The only real failure is just not to try again.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I wish I learned that earlier too.
Same. Dita, absolutely. And thank you, because it's a great advice also to give to the younger arbitration practitioners, that of course, they're going to have failures, not to call them that anymore, and just to continue trying.
Yeah.
And now, Yasmin, what would you say is the greatest achievement of your career?
I think it's still to come, to be honest.
Great.
It's still to come. I think taking a very objective view over my life and, the career I've had so far, some of us are incredibly lucky and gifted and have been blessed with a life and parents and a trajectory that just projects you onto, where you want to go. And I've been that lucky. And so, to actually sort of put my foot down and say, okay, this is really a great achievement. I'm still waiting for that moment where I'll feel that I wasn't set up to get there. And I tried and failed, and found the way to get to, whatever that place is. So the answer is still to come.
That's great. I like it.
Yasmin, speaking of quote unquote failures, during your career, have you ever experienced unconscious or conscious gender bias? And have you ever been discriminated against due to your ethnicity?
So when I read the questions you sent across earlier, I was like, oh God, that's a tough one, because I have to say, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these things also depends on your personality type. And I was loud and obnoxious and very opinionated. And I have always worked with people that encourage that. And to be honest, mostly men. And so I've never felt that because I was a woman or because I came from a different background, I wasn't being listened to. I think I was listened to, and I don't think that there was discrimination on the part of the people that I worked with or the people that were decision makers in how my career would unfold. And that's a very honest assessment. I know it's not very topical because, the topic of the day is really to talk about how we've been, in some way or another, it's been harder for us than it's been for others. And I've done a lot of soul searching about this because, when all the Me Too events took place, and I'm a bit of a born again feminist. I used to think that feminism was passé, and now that I'm older, I realize it's not. It's very much topical, and it's very much necessary to promote women and to help women. So I'm very much a born again feminist. It's really that I will talk about it forever if you let me talk about it. But I had to come to terms with the fact that as a younger associate, I was probably harder on not harder, but I would not regard other women who weren't speaking up for themselves as highly as I would guys. So I was perhaps one of the women who looked upon women more harshly than I would look upon guys myself. Or because I was, in the boys club, maybe unconsciously let women outside of that club too. And I have to make amends for that. And I do that by trying to promote women even harder now that maybe I have more power to do that now than I used to. But I think that if something held back women of my generation, for some of them, there was definitely discrimination. There's no question about that. And that's probably the majority. In my own personal case, what held me back, if anything did, it's my own view of the world and my own projection of my own life. When I was 25 years old and I sat in my office at Freshfields, I thought about the fact that I didn't know how I would lead that life and have a family later on. I didn't see it as something that was possible. I couldn't imagine working 15 hours a day and having the kind of family life I always thought I wanted to have. But that was a limitation I placed on myself. It was cultural, right. It was social. It wasn't anybody telling me that I couldn't do it. Actually, all my partners told me I could do it. Male partners told me I could do it. And I can bet a lot of money on the fact that the associate, 25-year-old associate, male associate sitting next to me wasn't thinking the same thing. There was no doubt in his mind. It was completely compatible. And so it was, it was a bit of a glass ceiling I put over my own head. Now, I didn't do it willingly. It was completely unconscious on my part. It was probably because also of the world that I grew up in. But I probably placed that limitation upon myself. So one of the things I discussed with younger associates, female associates, younger women in our field is to what extent are you limiting yourself, or to what extent is your environment limiting you? And to what extent do you need to speak up professionally in order to get on with where you want to get on to? I think we need to be fair with that, with those different vectors and those different elements in our environment, and be honest about them and address them.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, you have to recognize, it's like having a conversation with yourself. What are you doing to hold back yourself, and not putting the blame on what everybody else is doing or might be doing to you.
And I'm sure everybody else is right too, right? Yeah. I'm sure there's been, countless numbers of women who've been held back because of either their gender or their ethnicity, and men who've been held back for the same reasons. But very honestly, I don't think that was my case.
Mm-hmm. All right. Actually, thank you for that insight. Yeah.
That's amazing to hear, in the sense that at least there are examples when, like you didn't have, or you didn't feel discriminated, so you don't know. And no, actually, I think that's nice to hear. And thank you again for keeping extremely real and just saying, even mentioning that it's something that you think you did to yourself, because I think many people feel the same way. I feel the same way about a lot of things, that maybe it's my own projection and it's not just the environment. But I would like to mention, though, because of what you said earlier about like being in the boys club and not necessarily like supporting, and now you're doing it even more. The first time actually I met Yasmin, it was at an Arbitral Women event in Paris. It was the first time that I went to an Arbitral Women event, and you were just so nice, and I really look up to you since then, and giving me so many advice and just telling me that so many things were possible, because you were telling me about your experience in Dubai. And I just found it fascinating that, being from France, like growing up here with Iranian parents, and then you've been able to travel so much and achieve so much. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
And on that note, and you already mentioned a piece of advice earlier, but could you please give us another piece of advice for younger arbitration practitioners?
Of course. I think we've discussed success and failure, and we discussed, looking deep within as to what's holding you back. But I think the most important piece of advice is everybody needs to be bold.
Oh, I like that.
we need to be bold, because if you don't try, you're obviously never going to get. And I can think of countless moments in my own career where I doubted even the fact of trying, right? That email you want to send to that super important person because you want something from them, and you're thinking, oh God, they're going to look at that email and they're going to think, oh my God, who is she to email me that? But then when you think for a minute, you say, if I don't try, I'm never going to know. If I don't at least give it a go. And so my really most important advice to anybody who's interested in what I have to say is be bold. Try. I mean, the worst thing that you can do is not succeed. That's okay. You'll try again in a different way. I remember this. This is something that really occurred to me when I was in high school, because I was going to high school that would send students in France to a particular law school. I didn't want to go to that particular law school. I wanted to go to another law school. I really wanted to go to the Sorbonne. And everybody I talked to told me it's impossible. That's the administrative rule. If you're from that high school, you will go to that law school. And so I said, no, that's not possible. I really need to find a way out of here. And there was particularly complicated administrative steps to take. And my high school director thought I was going cuckoo in the head. I said, no, I'm not. Who cares? Let me try. I tried. I got the okay. I went to the Sorbonne, which is a school I wanted to go to. And since then, I've been thinking to myself, don't listen to what people who you think should know better, or people whose advice you seek. If that advice tells you not to try because it's never been done before, or because they think that you can't succeed, well, don't listen to that and try.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's such an amazing advice. It's definitely like people telling you it's impossible and you telling them, well, watch me. That's what you did.
And I think it's also because I have it's a psychological, but also an intellectual issue with people telling me something's always been done a certain way.
Yeah.
And if it's always been done a certain way, then we should continue doing it that way.
Right. Yeah.
Why? If there's a better way of doing it, or if there's a different way of doing it that's going to get me where I want to get, why shouldn't I try that?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, be bold.
Yes. Yasmin, I absolutely love your energy. You are just, and I like to say you are a queen.
Definitely.
So I'm curious to know, I want to know, where do you get it from? What are the things, or who are the people in your life that you feel make you who you are?
I had incredible parents who from day one told me that anything I wanted was possible. And that's been, an inspiration and an inner force. That's I have no doubt really, really helped me along the way. I have an older brother who has challenged every step I've taken, and against which I've had to fight back every step. And he keeps me on my toes. I have an incredibly supportive husband that never feels that I'm taking up too much oxygen in the room, which I do a lot of the time. And I'm blessed with real friends who are supportive. It's a whole thing, it's a whole package.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's so important and it makes a difference. So yeah. And of course, Hana, our most important question.
Go for it. Okay.
We love to know, in your free time, what do you get into on Netflix? If you watch Netflix, are you How to Get Away with Murder or Suits type of gal?
I loved How to Get Away with Murder.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
You do too.
I loved it. I have to say though, after season 1 or halfway into season 2, I was like, they're kind of, they're stringing this along a little too far.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I loved the premise. I loved the actors. I thought it was great. I was a huge Game of Thrones fan.
Okay.
Okay.
I watched it, from beginning to end. I was disappointed with the rest, like everybody else. But how can you end a series like that? You can't end it,
Yeah, definitely.
What can I tell you that I loved House of Cards.
Oh yeah, I love that too. That's good.
The first season was incredible. It was new. It was a whole new way of filming. It was smart, like really smart. What do we love in series? We love smart dialogues, catchy and inspiring characters, great clothes, if they can put in some great clothes. Why did we all watch Gossip Girl? I mean, the clothes in that series was unreal. And to show you just how old I am, Sex and the City was a game changer in my life.
Yeah,
definitely a game changer.
I love Sex and the City.
Yeah, I would.
Sex and the City, really came at a time, for my generation, at least. You're way too young, but to show us that there was another way of, that if we acted like guys, it didn't make us sluts. That if we sort of were bold and empowered in our lives professionally and personally, then that was cool too. It was a game changer. It was a real game changer for our generation.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Yasmin, thank you so much for joining us today. I, of course, am here in the British Virgin Islands, where I look forward to hosting you soon. You could come back with Hana if you would like.
Yes.
That would be great. That would be fantastic. I had a baby recently, so I'll tell you what, a holiday on the beach and visiting you would be my dream.
Oh, well, congratulations on the baby.
Thanks.
A baby boy or baby girl?
Baby boy.
Yes.
This is some pictures. Nice. He's so adorable.
Nice. Well,
congratulations. Another cool thing about Yasmin, you won't believe it, Janette.
What?
The dog to work. He's under the table right now.
He's snoring under the table.
You bring him to work like every day? Almost,
yeah.
Oh, wow.
How wonderful is that, right?
And it's a big dog. It's not like a tiny dog. He's a big
that's what
dog.
I was thinking a little dog, because immediately I was picturing you walking in the streets of Paris with a little poodle or something.
No, he's an Australian dog. He's like proper dog.
A proper dog. Okay. Nice.
The reality is that I have a really tall and chunky husband. And when I told him that when I basically told him we had no choice, we had to get a dog, his only, no-go was a little poodle dog. He's like, I can't have a little poodle dog, in the streets of Paris. I need a big dog. Yeah. So we have a big dog.
I like it. Well, Yasmin, thank you very much. It's been indeed a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. And all the best on Paris Arbitration Week.
Thank you ever so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you, Janette. Thank you, Hana.
Thank you so much.
Many thanks to Yasmin Mohammad for taking time out of her busy schedule to join us here on Arbitration Life. For more Arbitration Life, be sure to hit the subscribe button and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram for more Arbitration Life.